folks, and welcome to another Make Noise Office Hours. I am your guest host today, Anthony Thomas Rolando. You can call me Tony Rolando. How are you all doing? So you've got me here for about 45 minutes or an hour. And while I might not be quite the patch maestro that your normal host, Walker Farrell, is, I might be able to answer some questions for you that have long been nagging you as you patch your synthesizers and attempt to create wonderful music. So, should we start by breaking down this patch? Or are there questions about this particular patch? I guess I should ask real quick, can everybody see the video? Can you see my hands? All right, we have a question here from Stefano. Can Renee fire more than one note at the time? The answer to that question is yes. In this particular patch, Renee is firing multiple notes. It is using the X channel to fire one stream of notes, and the Y channel is firing the other stream of notes. And I can show you just exactly what I mean here. I'm going to break the patch down. And this is one channel on the Renee. And I come back here. You can see my sequence on the X channel. I turn that down, and I can bring in the sequence that I have on the Y channel. If I combine those together, I have the pattern that was then being run through some post-processing to create the complete sound. Bring in some echophone, a little bit of verb, or herby verb, as some folks call it. Hang tight, folks. I am new to this. And here we go. All right. And I think we have another question here. All right. Chris Walker sending a shout out to Walker MP. That's Walker from MP Sphere, saying thank you for just being you. And I would like to agree. I too would like to thank Walker and Pete for just being Walker and Pete. It's always fun to work with these folks, and always fun to see what sort of video madness they're creating for us. Got another question here from, I'm probably gonna not say this correctly, Pincho Paxton. I never understand X, Y, and Z properly. All right, well, let's break this down a little bit. So the X, Y, and Z, well, it's actually more X, Y, and I'm only using X and Y right now. The Z is how you would access different states, but we'll start with X and Y. And the concept is really, it comes from the original Renee, where we use the X and the Y axis to create something that we call the Cartesian sequence. And I'm not using the Cartesian sequence at the moment, but if I click the C here, you can see it. It's not super exciting right now because of the clock variations that I'm using. But essentially, the X and the Y channels combine to create the C channel. And as you can see how C is moving here, if I remove either of these clocks, you'll notice that now C only moves, the Cartesian channel is only moving on the Y axis because I only have a Y clock patched. I put that X clock back in and I remove the Y clock, you'll notice that the Renee is only moving on the X axis. And when I combine both the X and Y, I get that Cartesian motion. So that's why we have an X and a Y. With the newer Renee, we decided why not allow each of these axes to have their own sequence as well. So we are not limited to just the Cartesian channel. So right now you're hearing just the X and Y. Now the Z axis comes into effect if you start storing states, which I've got to be honest with you, I don't do too often. I generally like to play in a more analog way. If I get something I like, I hit record. But the idea behind the Z-axis was to allow people to create many different sequences using the X and Y axis and then sequence through those sequences. So in essence, you are sequencing the sequencer. All right, let's see what else we've got here. All right, Gabe asked, how are you changing the time on the Y channel of Renee? Good question. And it's pretty simple. I'm using on the Tempe, I have two of my Tempe channels here. You can see they're purple instead of being blue. And that means that they're able to be shifted. And I'm using another channel of Tempe, channel 3 here, to go to the mod input. And so when I have nothing patched in the mod input, you can see that they are always, it's just this one clock right here. As soon as I patch back into the mod input, I can start shifting between the two clocks. And I have the slower clock. And then when channel 3 goes high, I have the faster clock. So it's kind of a fun way to patch program variations on your timing. Since you're, got another question here from Constantine. How you doing? Haven't seen you in a while. Renee X and Y are triggering maths for Optimix envelopes. Yes, exactly. So I got 2 channels of gate sequencing, and those are headed out here to the trigger inputs on the maths, and then the maths is headed over here to the Optimix. Wish there was an easier way to audition the CD value of a specific stage without going into the latch mode. Would be so much more intuitive and musical to have a momentary shortcut for this. Well, I don't know Beats by Kabuki. I don't know if this is exactly what you're talking about, but the way I do, the way I set up a sequence on the Renee, one stage at a time, is something like this. I'm gonna go to this X sequence that you can hear right now, and I'm on the access page, right? What I do is I turn off access to everything except for 1 or 2 of them. Or if I don't want the rhythmic effect, I go ahead and I just turn on the 1, and then I can tune it. And then I step to this one. And then if I wanted to get up to step 5, I've got a new sequence. So I don't know if that helps you or not, but that's how I've always done it. That's using the access page to just isolate the one or two or three steps. Sometimes it's really useful if you're trying to make a 6 or 8 step pattern. Maybe you want to concentrate on just 3 of the steps to start with. So I might start with just add one step at a time and kind of build it. I'm liking that, but I want a couple more steps in it, so I'm into that. So now I've built a new pattern for that. Just one step at a time. Again, I started with just the one. And move to the 3 of them. Kind of build it slowly. It's also good if you're trying to check, steps against each other, like step 1 versus step 8. Maybe you're trying to put the same note on 2 different steps. Say you want these 2 to be the same. Then we bring the whole sequence in. Go ahead and patch that envelope back in. And we have a new sequence. Okay, I hope that answers your question. Let's see here. Just looking to see if there's any other questions about the patch before I start getting into other things. Curious to know what is going on in the DPO to make its unusual sawtooth shape. I guess that's not really related to the patch. We'll come back to that one. I think, well, that's everything on the current patch. So we'll get into something else here. Chris Walker is asking, which module do you consider groundbreaking for you guys at the very start of Make Noise as a company, and which lately? Things were so much simpler at the very start of the company. To be honest, every module anyone did in any company seemed groundbreaking for a period of time. I think the first really, I think there's maybe 2 that seemed really groundbreaking at the time, and that would be the Phonogene and the first Renee. The Phonogene, because I really wanted to get into granular stuff, and there wasn't anything in modular at that point, and so it seemed like we were kind of diving into the great abyss when we were doing that. We were designing a module with nothing to reference from, and typically when we're designing something, we've got a lot of things to look back on, like the DPO. We can look at all the great work of folks like Don Buchla and Dr. Moog and Serich, and we can see how these folks made fantastic analog voltage-controlled oscillators, and we can learn from those things. But with the Phonogene, we had to learn from people outside of modular and outside of modular synthesis. So I spent a lot of time reading Microsound by Curtis Rhodes, and that was really what informed me about granular technique. And so when we set off to make it, we were using this strange book that some people own and few people read, but it's a wonderful book. I highly recommend it. We were using Microsound to guide us in developing a module, so it was hard. And then the Renee was just, again, it seemed really big at the time because we were pretty overwhelmed by the development of it. It just seemed like a bug farm, to be honest with you. every time we'd look a little deeper, we'd find something else we needed to fix. And there's points where it definitely felt like it was never going to be 100% or even 99%. So those felt like big developments. Lately, I mean, I guess I could just point to the last couple big releases. I mean, for me, I think lately it was the QPOS. I really enjoyed developing that with the team. It was a lot of fun. It was actually more work than you'd think, because I was really trying to make a filter that could be useful to a lot of different kind of people making a lot of different kinds of music. So I had to take a lot of feedback from a lot of people, some of which I didn't initially agree with even, and I had to sort of consume all that data from these folks and try to create something that we could all be excited about. So that felt that was a great development process. It was a lot of fun, and it was hard, it was challenging, but in the end, I feel real proud about the QPOS. Let's see what else. Got some new comments down here. There we go. Considering your references to Curtis Rhodes, I'm interested whether you've considered making a module that incorporates pulsar synthesis. Pulsar synthesis is covered in the microsound text. I've not considered it at the moment. Maybe we will at some point, but definitely not. It's the blueprint for pulsar synthesis can be found inside the book Microsound. HR Terror. What module has had the most input from the team before it was released? And which module had the least input before released? Well, really, if you look historically, there was a time where there was just less of a team. And, the initial modules obviously did not have input from the team because there was no team at that point. And now every module has a lot of input from the team being the folks who work here at Make Noise. Almost everybody who works here ends up getting roped into the beta testing process. I think some of them really enjoy it. I think some of them would, maybe some of them would rather not, but I still rope them in because I think it's great to get a lot of different feedback. So, we got Jake or Mike or Sam working down the production line, and I go down to John and say, when can you spare one of these folks? I need them to test the zero control, for example. And we got a little test room where we get them set up and a notepad. Sometimes I have questions written out for them. Sometimes I just want to see how far they can get without a manual or anything. That's one of the things I like to do. Put someone in front of something that they've never seen before, provide them with little or no details as to how it works or operates, and just see how far along they get. And that can be really helpful, I think, in figuring out a couple things. One, how to improve the device itself, but two, how to write a good manual. The kind of questions these folks come at me, they usually end up being answered in the manual that Walker and myself will write. The team is really involved in everything at this point. And at one point, when there wasn't a team, they weren't. And it's great to have a team. That's all I can say. I would definitely not want to go back to developing things in a vacuum by myself. It's much more fun and rewarding, and I think we end up making better modules, better synthesizers with the team. Let's see what else we got here. Sorry. Yes, Hack 7, the Morphogene without a manual was rough. I mean, even as I was, aside from Tom, I was basically the second person to put hands on it and was involved with it from the start. And I would still at times find myself quite lost in the early. And also you got to consider this is a Morphogene that still had a lot of problems with it. It still had bugs. So sometimes things would happen, and you would think, "Am I doing something wrong, or is there a problem with this device? Is this firmware bad?" Whew. It was definitely a challenging development process. I'm just I got another little shout out here. Thank you, Cinematic Laboratory. I'm glad you're enjoying the Mimeophone. I enjoy it as well. Honestly, it's one of those modules where during the development, there was a point where I felt like maybe this is too mundane. I mean, it sounds so good all the time. Is that good? And then when I actually started using it a lot in my own music, I thought, wow, this is great. I love being able to patch into the Mimeophone and get good sounds most of the time, because sometimes getting good sounds can be such a struggle, and it's wonderful to have something like the Mimeophone where you can create those wonderful sounds. Yeah, I don't know what I'm trying to say here aside from just that I too enjoy the Mimeophone. Thank you, Tom, for developing that with us. I really appreciate it. See, why make the black and gold panels exclusive to black and gold owners? Basically, a lot of times there's stuff going on the back end of things that we don't really talk about, but basically dealers didn't want to have to carry two versions of every module, and they didn't want to stock the panels. So it just made more sense to just offer them as a system. And it also makes the system look really nice to have the different panels. That was one of the goals, was to make a beautiful looking complete instrument. For the folks that want to build their own instrument, they're going to have a different look. All right, Chris, are there some funny unused name ideas for modules? Well, this is probably not exactly the answer you're looking for, but we had a fellow who used to work for us quite a bit named Matthew Sherwood. And one day Matt Sherwood came up with the idea for this sort of alter ego make noise company that he called MACNAS. That's MAKNAS, MACNAS. And there is a whole catalog of absurd MACNAS modules, which are they're like these modules that you can understand what they do, but never would you want to produce them. So, for example, there is a 24-bit 96 kilohertz mult. The projected cost on it was $400, and it was just one in with three outs. So it was a 1 to 3 digital mult with a 24-bit 96 kilohertz resolution. The sound quality is excellent. Another MACNAS module was the Source of Certainty. It was a module. It was 10 HP. It has one jack, and that jack outputs 1 volt, always guaranteed 1 volt. The Source of Certainty. I believe the projected cost on that one, it used a precision trimming process that increased the cost considerably. I think we were looking at $350 for the Source of Certainty. Yeah. Anyhow, MACNAS was a hard sell. I don't know if we'll ever come forward with that line, but we can definitely thank Matt Sherwood for many laughs. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm not as good as this as Walker and Pete. I'm struggling with finding the comments here. Chris responds, yes, we need random modules that guarantee the outcome. Oddly enough, I have a story for that. So this is maybe like 10 years ago. Doper was making a stepped random module, and it worked great. It was a wonderful little module, but there became this conversation around it that it wasn't random enough. And Sean Cleary, who runs Analog Haven, comes to me and he says, "Look, I need to stock a new random module. It needs to be way more random than this Doper module. Can you make something?" And at that point, I thought, okay, I'm going to call Grant Richter, see if he'll let me produce a version of the Woggle Bug. So I got him on the phone, and he was okay with that. So we produced the Woggle Bug, which apparently was far more random than this Doper random voltage generator. And so for about 6 or 7 months, people were pretty happy with how random was. And then after about a year had passed, this conversation began that the Woggle Bug, it's too random. And folks started coming back around to this Doper module, which was much less random. And then further, there was a release of one of Grant's other circuits, the noise ring, which is, I wouldn't call it predictable, but it's repeatable. So that too sated that desire for a more predictable or more repeatable random. But it is just kind of funny how people's taste change and the definition of random or an aggressive sound changes over the years. People will sometimes say that modern modules sound like old modules, but if you haven't heard some of the older stuff, you really don't know. I mean, when you play an original Buchla 259 and then you check out a DPO or some of the other 259 type modules available in Eurorack, you really realize things are a lot more wild and aggressive. That was a long time ago. Let's see here. Cinematic Laboratory, would the control cell tech ever return? It has, actually. So the basis of the control cell is inside the Tempe. And this idea of storing states and sequencing through them has also been ported to the Renee 2. And one of the functionalities of control cell was this sort of playable, programmable clock divider. And that is what the Tempe is. And so some of the code from the control cell was actually pulled out and put to work in the Tempe. I have no idea how the other voice sounds over top of that. Doesn't sound right. We have to retune that line too. Well, I don't know, folks, do you want me to do some patching, or do you have questions about modules, or do you want to just keep asking these questions about the history? I'm down for either. I'm here to provide you with some informative entertainment. Standard tapes. How much have you been inspired by historical computer music? That I know of, I couldn't say. I'm sure some of the artists that I've enjoyed are computer based, but I don't pay that much attention to what people are using. I know that I guess maybe you could recommend some collections of historical computer music. That would be pretty awesome to check out. I'm always looking for new music to listen to. So yeah, if you have some collections of historical computer music that you think we should check out, drop a link in there and I will definitely give it a listen. All right. Wolf Parkinson, the CV bus origin, a really nice add to the system. Okay, so there is a story that goes with the CV bus. And folks, if you don't know, the CV bus is this strip right through the center of the system. And the story behind it is that Alessandro Cortini had contacted us about getting a shared system that he wanted to use while he was on the road with 9 Inch Nails. And he had been using a music easel, and it was just, I think he was wanting to change it up and was also wanting to use something that was current, so that he could get service on it when needed. Being on the road can take quite a beating. And one of the things that he had talked about was, he called me and said, could you do some normalizations for me in the system? And I said, yeah, we could look at doing that. He wanted certain things normaled throughout the system just to make his patching a little quicker. He kind of had some specific task that he needed to take care of nightly at these performances with 9 Inch Nails. And so he wanted some things normaled, like, clock signals, normal to destinations, and so on. And in case you don't know what normaling is, it basically means that there's a little connection that happens at the jack when nothing's patched. This is not normaled, which is why the clock stopped, and which is why the sequence stopped. But had it been normaled, it would keep playing because there would be another clock normaled in there. And so he had talked to me about normaling all these things inside the system. And it kind of turned out to be quite a big job. There was a lot of different points to solder. And then I was concerned because I thought, when things are on the road, they're getting bumped around all day long and smashed, and they're getting loaded and unloaded by people who just don't give a damn sometimes, or maybe they've had a long day. It might get accidentally dropped. So my thought was, with all these wires kind of soldered on the backs of boards and stuff, it might end up causing him more heartbreak than happiness. And so I started thinking about, how could I accommodate these normalizations in a way that was maybe more robust, but also could be useful to people other than just Alessandro. And so that's where this CV bus kind of came from. I looked at the music easel, which has this strip of patching through the center, and I thought, wow, that's a great idea to put it through the center as opposed to at the top or the bottom, because a lot of our CVIO are at the tops and bottoms of modules. So that's where the idea to put it in the center came from. And then it just became this idea of, how can we make it more than just a mult? It's distributing control signals and performance data. So it might be really useful to be able to see some of that data. And so that's where we came with the LEDs around the jacks that kind of show you what's happening. So for example, in the case of this patch, I've got a clock. It's coming out of the tempi. When I patch it to channel 1 on the CV bus, you can see everywhere that it is. And if I want to grab it and patch it to something to change a sound, I can do that. For example, maybe I want to sync my echo. I patch the tempo in, and now my echophone is synced to the channel, the X channel of the Renee. And so that was the main idea. The other thing he had asked for was a proper, a low noise, high current output, something that could have a cable running quite a distance to get to the stage mixer. I don't know the correct terminology for it, but I knew that we needed to use an output amp that had high current. And the brilliant thing about that is it also allowed us to be able to plug headphones into the output. So the amp that we used, 20 seconds of delay. Okay. So the amp that we used is actually able to drive a set of headphones as well, because it has quite a bit of current output. It's a real nice Burr Brown IC that sounds great for headphones, sounds great for line driver on stage. And yeah, Cortini was very happy with the initial prototype that we built for him. And so we ended up putting it in production, and now all the 7U systems come with the CV bus. So yeah, the idea was just to provide a useful way to kind of have signals distributed throughout the system, visual fast. It cleans it up a little bit, but it's modular, so there's always going to be a mess of spaghetti over top of the thing that you're inevitably trying to get to. All right. What we got here? Trying to find another question. All right, we've got about 20 minutes left here. Does anybody want to patch from scratch? Or do you have some more questions? I'm down for whatever you all want to do. If you patch from scratch, I'm going to be looking for input from you all, because I patch by myself, for myself, all the time. I'm looking to patch with you. So what do you got? I do have another pretty interesting question here. If I could keep popping. There we go. Could you chat? This is D-Belay. Could you chat about machine versus human programming with regards to tempo? All right, excellent question. And for that, I think I'm going to go ahead and also break down this patch so it's a little bit simpler to see the difference between machine and human programming. Give me 1 second here. All right, machine versus human programming. So to start with, I'm going to take channel 1, I'm going to patch it into the CV bus so I can have a clock that I can distribute to a few different destinations. I'm not going to mess around with melody right now. I'm just going to use the clock straight into the strike input on the Optimix. And I'm going to take a nice, simple sound from the DPO, a sine wave. The purest of tones. So pure, even Eric Clapton will not make music with it. So the sine wave into the Optimix, the clock to the strike input. And there we have it. All right, so machine versus human programming. I'm going to also set up a second sound so we kind of have a reference. I'm going to use another sine wave, ultra pure, ultra clean tone, folks. And I'm going to use another channel from the tempi. Let's get crazy. Let's use channel 3. And first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of wipe out the settings that I had on that tempi. So come here, turn off my shifting, and then I hold A. And this is actually a wonderful shortcut for machine programming. I hold A, and I press each one of these once, and that sets them all back to 1 to 1. Right now, my tempi is set up the way I like it with analog clock behavior, which just means that when you turn the knob, it speeds up or slows down. So I'm going to go ahead and patch into this other. So now I'm going to use channel 3. And I'm going to show you first machine programming. So machine programming just means that I'm using predefined ratios and I'm inputting them using button combos. There's a lot of button combos in tempi, but the few that you really need to know are pretty easy to remember. If you want to slow things down, you want to divide the tempo, you hold A and you press the channel that you're trying to divide the number of times you want to divide it. So for example, I could have this set up. And you know what? I'm going to make this sound a little different. I'm going to go ahead and throw the pitch up just a little bit more so it's easier to distinguish the two. Channel 3, hold A, hit the channel 3 button twice, and you notice it doesn't change until I release that A button. And now, as you can hear, I've got 1 over 2 and 1 over 1. I can go 1 over 3. I hold channel A again. 1, 2, 3. I know it sounds like a bossa nova on my old Casio SK. All right. Now I can also go faster. And for that, I hold B. I go faster. Go twice as fast. Or 4 times as fast. Or really, 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 really fast. And if I hit it once, I'm back to 1 to 1. Okay, so that's machine programming. You're inputting data as if you were typing code into a computer. You are a machine. Now, there's also human programming. And for that, we just hammer on these buttons. So, for example, I'm going to set the mic down so I can do that. And as you can see, there's a little bit of phasing difference there. There's some settings in the tempi that allow you to adjust just how loose or tight the timing is. I'm getting a look from Walker. Oh, no, I'm okay. And so that's why this rhythm here sounds the way it does. And I guess we called it human programming because you, the human, are just hammering on these buttons and making the rhythm that you're trying to make, making the clocking, the tempi that you're trying to make. If I had really amazing timing, I could potentially create the exact same thing that I created with a strict machine programmed setup. But most of us do not have that. And so that's why we have the option for machine or human programming. I'll do a little bit more human programming here. Hang on. Get it back to machine. All right. Hang on here. These are updating fast and I'm missing stuff. All right. Gregory Smith says, oh, is that new, setting tempo with the knob? Missed that. Yes, there's a firmware update for the tempi that gives you this wonderful behavior. And if we patch something like a random voltage, you can modulate the clock as you would an analog clock source. It's available from the website. If you point your browser and navigate over to makenoisemusic.com and click on that tempi page, you can go and download the firmware. There's instruction for how to install it. Make sure you follow them. Later, Brett Nocky. Folks, if you haven't checked out Brett's music, you should really check it out. He's created quite a bit of gorgeous electronic music that is worth listening to. And he's headed back to work. Good for you, Brett. All right. Is there a patch you always wanted to see from others with Make Noise modules that never happened so far? Man, that is a heavy question. I really couldn't say, you know, people do so much with all of this stuff that no, I can honestly say there is not a patch. I do think there's patches that people have not yet done, and I look forward to hearing them potentially. Might also be running for the volume knob to turn it down. You never really know. It could be wonderful. It could be terrible. But at this point, I'm not looking for anything in particular anymore. People have really pushed the envelope of synthesis, so to speak. All right. I'm not seeing. If you had a question you really wanted to answer and I missed it, will you go ahead and drop it in there again, because I will be glad to answer it. And so for now, I'm going to go ahead and patch up a little bit more. Standard tapes, this is the Make Noise office hours system. For those of you who are just tuning in and you've never checked this out before, this is Make Noise office hours. We do this every Thursday at the same time, right here, same place, same time. And we don't always have a shared system. Sometimes we have other systems, other instruments. It's not always me. It's usually Walker. Sometimes it's Pete. And what we do in the office hours, although I didn't do much of it, typically what we do is we let you patch the system. You tell us where to patch what, and we do it together. Today was more me answering some questions. Like I said, I'm not as good at this as Walker is, but I can answer some questions in ways that he cannot answer them. And I'm not always here, so you are taking advantage of that and asking some questions. Here's another one. Hobie Sound. Wait, that's not what I meant. Here we go. David, do you think you will ever release a new Vactrol-based module? That is a really hard one, because I would love to do more with Vactrols. Unfortunately, sources for Vactrols are dwindling. And what I mean is sources for good Vactrols are dwindling. And we definitely have a good supply of them at the moment. However, developing something new means potentially having to get more of a supply. And that concerns me. So right now, probably not. But potentially in the future, I mean, it just depends on what sort of availability we have for them. All right, good question here about the CV bus. It says here, Ray Bowling asked, or they state, I noticed the CV bus can be patched inputs from anywhere, not just the left 4 jacks, but it seems like it's buffered. How is that? Is it buffered or not? All right, it is true. You can patch into the CV bus, or you can patch out of the CV bus anywhere. It is not buffered. The reason it is not buffered is that we have no use for a buffered mult in the Make Noise system. Now, in modular at large, there's some 250 different companies out there. There are companies where you need to use buffered mults. In this particular system, it was designed to not require buffered mults. The reason is that I find a mult is far more useful when you don't have to worry about where to patch the in, where to patch the out. It's all ins and outs. It just feels a little more useful to me. And so we set it up so that anywhere that we have a critical CV outputs, because really what a buffered mult does, it's mostly for your volt per octave signal, because a small change in a volt per octave signal can result in a big change of the tuning of a patch. And so what we did was we made the output drivers for our critical control voltages. For example, the X, Y, and C CV on the Renee, the 3 outputs for control voltages on the pressure points, the unity output on the maths. These outputs are designed so that they can drive a really large load. They have what's called a wide fan out. Pretty exciting stuff, folks. Wide fan out. So that means that you can patch the output of a maths to multiple destinations, and the signal itself will not be impacted. For that reason, we don't need a buffered mult, because the output of the maths has a buffer in it that's powerful enough that it can drive, 3 or 4 destinations. And the beauty of that is that we then are able to use any of these inputs also as outputs, and vice versa. Now, there is these lights here, and some of you are probably thinking, well, if it's not buffered, how is it driving the LEDs? The LED circuit runs in parallel to the passive mult, so that when you patch your signal in, the LED is driven by an entirely separate circuit. That means that there's no, it doesn't actually take any power from the signal. So your signal, if you put in 1 volt, you get out 1 volt, because this circuit is running in parallel to drive the LEDs. All right. How wide can this fan out go? This is a question from, I just lost it here. Standard tapes. How wide can this fan out go? 5 modules, 10 modules? And it really depends on the modules you're using. There is a spec within Eurorack, but not all adhere to said spec. It really depends on something called the input impedance at your destinations. And if you have a module that has super low input impedances, it might only be able to go to 2 or 3 of those. If you have modules like those that are in our system, you can go to a lot more. Although, I guess I've never really pushed the envelope beyond about 5 or 6, but potentially, maybe you could, after this is wrapped up, you could see how far you could patch it to, and let me know. Now, here's the thing. There's only so many potential destinations with the CV bus. So if you go into channel 1, you've got a copy of that. You got it here, 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 and here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 4 potential destinations. Obviously, it's been tested for that, and it works well. So I can guarantee you 4. I bet it can do a lot more. I've just never really taken it there. All right. Alec asked if there's plans to release the CV bus as a separate 1U module. And the answer is no, because it's specific to this case. And we do sell the cases empty when we have them. I don't know that we have them right now. Let's see. All right, folks, we're just about out of time here. If anyone else has a question for me, please, please ask. Hi, Ryan. How you doing? Hex7 says I'm doing a great job. I'm glad you feel that way. I'm a little uncertain about the quality of this particular presentation. I feel like I've done a lot more talking than patching, but perhaps that's what you all wanted, and I'm glad to do either. So thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. Let's see here. TJ, are there any new modules in the works? There's always new modules in the works. You always have to have something in the works. But things take a long time sometimes. Sometimes they take a short time. You just don't know until you get about 90% the way through. Constantine says, let the chat be your source of certainty. Yes, it is true that if you hand me a microphone, then you can be certain that I will talk into it. Let's see. Standard Tape says drum modules. I'm a big proponent to patching your own drum sounds. It's a thing that I like to do. And I feel like that combined with something like the Morphogene, I believe we have a couple of videos about it. Don't we have a video about that, Walker? Putting like multi-sample into the Morphogene.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, we have a video about it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is you could program potentially a percussion sound, and then you could sample it as a splice into the Morphogene, and you could have 20 or 30 different percussion sounds and sequence the organize parameter to get to your different sounds. Actually, I think Basek made a really cool video showing himself doing something along those lines. So yeah, I'm a big proponent to programming your own percussion sounds. I guess I don't see any other questions for me right now. So I'm going to close it out. I'm going to patch up a real quick percussion sound that I used to show people a lot back when I was on the demo station in the basement of the Anaheim Convention Center next to the Asian ukulele exporters. And every once in a while, someone would actually fall down the stairs and stumble to the modular synthesizer booth, and inevitably it would eventually ask something along the lines of, but how would I ever make music with this? So one thing I would show them is some percussion patches that I would do to make some drum sounds that are maybe a little less typical, although perhaps by today's standards you will say this shit is basic. So let's unpatch here, and I'm going to close it out with a quick drum patch. So I'll start with a sine wave. I'm going to patch that into the Optimix. And then I'm going to take a channel on my Tempi to make a clock. I've already got that patched here. So I'm going to start by patching that to the strike input. And then you should hear a sound. It's percussive. It's a short, plucky sound, in part due to the circuit inside the Optimix, which turns on quickly and turns off a little more slowly. So I'm going to tune that down a little bit. And now we have a lower sound, a lower percussive sound. And this is the trick that I like to show people that allows you to create a higher pitched attack and then to fall to a lower pitched decay. So I'm going to take that same clock that I'm striking the Optimix with. I'm going to patch that to the linear FM input, and I'm going to turn that up. And that gives me my sharp, higher pitched attack, which can then fall to that lower pitch. And if I want to make the sound feel a little bigger and boomier, I can let a little bit of the tone drone out by turning up the control amount on the Optimix. And now you can kind of hear that. I can make it sharper. Can make it less so. Can make it lower. Make it higher. And I can also sequence it. So if I were to take that same clock, patch it to one of my sequencers, I'm going to use the X channel of the Renee. I take that XCV. you have something that you can break dance the afternoon away with. Folks, thanks so much for tuning in and listening to me ramble. The people who work here have to do that daily, or at least they used to when we were coming into the shop more often. Now they don't have to do it as much. But yes, thank you for listening to me rant. We have a request for 142. All right, I'm signing out. Thanks again, folks.